The poorly Sandman. It all began with a slight tickle in his throat. Then his forehead grew dreadfully hot. The Sandman felt quite faint, had to take to his bed, and at long last fell properly ill. Now, that isn't usually the end of the world, for we all feel a bit under the weather from time to time. Some of us more often, others only once in a blue moon. But for the Sandman, it was an absolute disaster. Do you actually know what vital duties the Sandman has to perform every single evening? Well, I expect you know at least one, for that is how he earned his name. He is responsible for ensuring that every night, children receive a few grains of sand from the moon desert in their little eyes, so they might promptly fall into a deep and peaceful slumber. But there are other tasks the Sandman carries out each night to make sure you little ones are truly well. For one thing, he invents a brand new bedtime story every day for you to hear before you drift off, ensuring you have the most wonderful, sweet dreams. Another of his essential duties is to help children who have lost their way and cannot find their path home as evening falls. But now he was ill, and that was grave indeed. "The Sandman is coming. Not today," read the headlines in all the daily papers. It was the news of the hour. It was even reported on the telly. Millions of children across the globe, what am I saying? Billions of children the world over learned that their Sandman was poorly, and they were all terribly worried and sad. Let's hope the Sandman gets better soon. I'm sure he'll be back on his feet in no time. Many sent the Sandman a small teddy, others painted a picture to cheer him up, while others wrote poems or recorded little videos. Before long, the post office was completely overwhelmed. Thousands of parcels for the Sandman, thousands upon thousands of cuddly toys, letters, drawings, and messages. How on earth could all of this be delivered to a single address? More and more arrived, and the queues of yellow lorries on the motorways and A-roads, all heading towards the sick Sandman's house, grew longer and longer. There were tailbacks on the motorways, the likes of which had never been seen. Many people were late for work or couldn't reach their offices, workshops, and factories at all. Supermarket shelves stood empty because the delivery vans were stuck in the muddle. And eventually, the lights went out in many towns because the coal needed for the great power stations couldn't get through the gridlock. Everything was bunged up with yellow Royal Mail vans carrying get-well wishes for the Sandman. Total chaos ensued when the power finally failed. Even the nuclear power stations stopped working because the maintenance crews simply couldn't get through the traffic. The great pumps failed, and soon no more water could be sent from the reservoirs into the taps. People were left without water or electricity. Lifts ground to a halt, and the electric trams stopped in their tracks. Everything came to a standstill. The Sandman knew nothing of this, not even that post van after post van was dumping enormous mountains of mail, letters, and parcels in front of his door, until his house was completely hidden from view. The bees and the fairies, who took such tender care of the sneezing troll Sandman, did a marvelous job. Yet it still took 10 full days before the old fellow felt himself again. During those 10 days, life across the world practically ceased, for the children wrote and wrote, wishing for their Sandman to return. They missed their nightly stories, and, what was perhaps even worse, the lost children couldn't find their way home, leaving their parents utterly heartbroken. Yes, who would have thought that a little troll like the Sandman performed such a vital role, that his absence would cause such an almighty mess? It took another day for the Sandman to realize the full extent of his illness and the chaos it had caused. His first act was to announce that he was feeling better and would return to work the very next day. That, as it turned out, was a bit of a blunder. For now the children all over the world were so thrilled that they wrote to him again to say how glad they were. The postal services had to set aside important deliveries because there simply wasn't a spare van or lorry to be had. Everything revolved around the Sandman's post. It couldn't go on. Then the Sandman had an idea. He invented a bedtime story in which he told the children how touched he was by their kindness, but he also explained the trouble all that Post had caused. He asked them to help him clear the jam. "Please, do not write to the Sandman anymore, for I shall be coming to see you every evening now with a new story." It took more than a fortnight for the chaos to clear, and for the factories, waterworks, power stations, and homes to be supplied normally again. Who could have imagined that a poorly Sandman would cause such a hullabaloo? Secretly, he thought up another 30 bedtime stories, so that in future no one would notice if he had to stay in bed for a day or even 10. With this clever reserve of stories, everything would carry on as usual. The wind fairies from the moon desert brought a little moon sand into the upper atmosphere every night, so the children always got their sleeping dust. For the stories, he had his solution. But if he fell ill again, who would lead the lost children home? That was the tricky part. For such an emergency, he had no one to step in. Not yet. The Sandman had a very particular knack for sniffing out tired children who couldn't sleep because they hadn't found their way to their beds. But how could he teach that knack to anyone else? It was impossible. Besides, only trolls like him had the power to stop time. Otherwise, he'd never managed to bring a story to every child in the world in a single night. There was only one way. Only someone from his own troll family could help him. So one night, while all the children were tucked up in bed, he stopped time and whisked himself off to his old home in Sweden to see his kin. He was in luck. There was a young troll, barely 100 years old, which is no age at all for a troll, who was eager to become the Sandman's apprentice. The old man couldn't have been happier. So the two of them traveled back, and the Sandman set time in motion once more. From the very next day, he would teach his apprentice everything there is to know about being a Sandman. Once all that was settled, the Sandman lay down and fell into a peaceful sleep. One day, he would take his apprentice to meet the wind fairies, introduce him as his worthy successor, and finally enjoy a well-earned retirement.